レオレオレ
藤太郎様。
オレオ。あれ？
J リーグ通帳できました。
今日から僕は藤太郎。
フィアレルフィアだ。チーズケーキ食べたい。そこを作る、混ぜる、流し込む。3ステップで簡単にチーズケーキ名人フィラデルフィア。クラフトから21歳学生買える
19歳社会人買える。
学生生徒または未成年の方は勝ち馬投票権を買えません。ルールですから。
風ゾクゾクする？今夜のスキー大丈夫？
温めてあげようか。
ゾクゾクする。
風の引き始めに液体の力カコナール。
早く飲んで風追い出せ。
山之内。じゃん。出るとこは出て、
完全2倍ズーム。
スリムなとこはスリム。
世界最小超軽量。
きっちり取れる、綺麗に映る。
ビッグミニネオ新発売。
ネオコニカ。
小田哲郎大黒摩季、情熱は眠らない。
I'll not deny her name, Mary Neal that sang, no sweeter could to Irish maid belong. Her surname's rather queer, 'tis neither here nor there, but she promised me she'd change it before long. Oh, grandma prima cool, slant the gal mavooni, I'll drink your head from Dewey till dawn. For 'tis you that has the sway from Mayo to Dublin Bay. Oh, grandma prima cool, lean down. Now riches I despise, and rank I poorly prize, 'tis little faith of either that I own. But with mine by my side, I would face the whole world wide, more proud than any king upon his throne. Oh, grandma prima cool, slant the gal mavooni, I'll drink your health from Dewey till dawn. For 'tis you that has the sway from Mayo to Dublin Bay. Oh, grandma prima cool, lean down. Now riches I despise, and rank I poorly prize, 'tis little faith of either that I own. But with mine by my side, I would face the whole world wide, more proud than any king upon his throne. Oh, grandma prima cool, slant the gal mavooni, I'll drink your health from Dewey till dawn. For 'tis you that has the sway from Mayo to Dublin Bay. Oh, grandma prima cool, lean down.
タートルワークス、世界中で大ヒットカラーマジック。ワックス&カラーのダブル効果で愛車復活。世界の車に対応、全12色のカラーマジック。売っているのは
オートバックス。
早急な胃腸の保護が必要です。
そんな一本の胃腸薬、新三共胃腸薬。
西洋の民族音楽は全てアイリッシュミュージックに何らかの影響を受けていると言われている。歴史的に常に他国の侵略や干渉を受けてきた小さな島国の音楽がなぜ逆にそれだけ広まっていったのか、その原因は定かではない。迫害されることが多かったために人口の流出が多く、流浪していった先々で音が伝えられたとも言われている。確かにアイルランド人と同じケルト民族が多く住むスコットランドやブルターニュの音楽にはほとんど同じ形態の音楽が残されている。アメリカの音楽もアイルランド人の移民なしでは存在しなかった。19世紀の中頃、アイルランドは大飢饉に見舞われ、大量の移民が船に乗ってアメリカに渡った。農民を主としたその移民の多くはアパラチア山脈の農村地帯に定着し、望郷の思いをフィドルに乗せていった。やがてその音楽はマウンテンミュージックと呼ばれるようになり、レコード会社によってカントリーという名称が付けられた。初期のカントリーのヒットソングの多くはアイルランドの民謡の替え歌が多かったという事実もある。アイリッシュミュージックはまた遠くインドの音楽にも影響を与えている。民族音楽としてすでに完成されているアイリッシュミュージックは、その楽器の編成も19世紀からほぼ固定されている。ギネスのトレードマークともなっているアイリッシュハープ、ブリキに穴を開けただけの笛、ティンホイッスル、ビブラートを排した弾き方をするフィドル、アコーディオンやコンセルティーナ、フルート、そしてタンブリンを大きくしたようなバウラン。アイリッシュミュージック特有の音を出すイーリアンパイプ。親しみやすいメロディーはややもすると単純に聞こえるが、音の種類の多さ、そしてリズムやアレンジの中には驚くほどの複雑さがある。アイリッシュミュージックを世界に伝えた最も代表的なバンド、チーフタンズのメンバーがその音楽の魅力について話をしてくれた。音楽の持つ力に対して彼らは敬虔なほどの気持ちを持っていた。
One thing about our music, and unlike a lot of other music throughout the world, it's music from the people, from the soul. It can be spontaneous. There are thousands and thousands of tunes, and which have not been heard very much throughout the world. And if you go back to the 8th century, the 9th century, we had a lot of our saints and scholars travelled to different countries throughout the world, and mostly teaching religion, but they also brought with them a certain amount of the music that went to different other countries. But the lyrics have to do, and the music itself has to do with events, things that took place in Ireland. You know, we've had lots of battles going back so many hundreds of years. Lots of visitors, as I say. We're also a nation of saints and scholars, very dramatic, very romantic, poetic. So that our tunes, although they may sound very joyful and for dancing to, behind a lot of these tunes, in fact, there are sad songs, sad memories for a lot of the people who compose these tunes. So a number of the songs, the ballads that are written more the last 200 or 300 years in English, but before that in Gaelic, in Irish. And unfortunately the English did take over, the English language took over the majority of the people. The language in itself, it's totally unlike any other language in the world. It's no relationship whatsoever to the English language. And I think it has a great bearing. It has it's just like your own language. You know, if you hadn't got your own language, well, perhaps the other traditions would not have been there either. And a lot of the tunes and songs that were composed about the way one speaks the language and the music from the language. It's a very musical language. So it plays a very important part in the old music that was there. I mean, at the moment I compose a lot of music for film, for different films and that sort of thing. The language is not necessary because it's all just melody and instrumental. But at the same time, for me, this is what I have inherited from my forefathers. You know, this gift of composing within the tradition of music. One of the things about the music itself, I mean, we play in different countries all over the world, and the people of that country sort of feel this could be their music. It sort of gets them here in the gut. It's so melodic, It moves people. The compositions are fantastic, and it's only now in recent years that even for not alone for our traditional folk music, but also for some of our rock music and popular music, popular songs, the melodies are very, very sincere, very strong, and therefore people sort of catch on to it. I think nowadays there's a lot of music being composed that, well, you hear it today but you've forgotten it tomorrow. That is not the thing with Irish music, Irish songs. We like to compose good tunes that people will remember and sing tomorrow. And one of the great things about Irish music is that it has so much variations of dance music, songs, laments for things that happened. You can compose music as I did for the seasons. Like there's a piece called Summertime that goes back hundreds of years, and I work around this and I bring in winter into spring, into summer, into autumn, and so there's so many subjects that you can actually play and do with the Irish traditional music.
It's very hard to keep it pure. And another way is to do what we do and to play it on original Irish instruments and not allow too many guitars and mandolins and bouzoukis and things in, but use the pipes and the harp and the timpan and any kind of instrument that's played naturally, like the air going through a tube, like the whistles, the bamboo whistles would be good, because we don't know how the Irish instruments were sounding in medieval times. There were no recordings, we have to guess, but we can be sure that they were natural instruments and not phony instruments. Well, I think the music is very important because all kinds of music immediately affect the listener. If I make a speech, or if I say something in words, or if I recite a poem, or show you a picture, it has an effect, but not so immediate. The effect of music is devastating in the whole personality that listens. It's much stronger. And Plato, in Greece, hundreds of years ago, realized that because he said the music in Greece has got worse. Now, if this will happen, the whole civilization will go down, and it did. When the music deteriorates, the nation deteriorates. When a great master like Beethoven, Bach, César Franck and all come, everybody develops spiritually with the music, and a new phase in history can begin.
2時間テープで6時間も綺麗に撮れたんです。
それが秘密の19ミクロン東芝ニューアリーナ。
綺麗なアリーナ。
諸君、今年も品揃え、安さ、サービスをモットーに真心を込めてお客様に接すること、それがビクトリアだ。ビクトリア。
地球の謎を教えてあげよう。アクション RPG ガイア幻想記。ドラクエのエニックスから
関東でいけるよ。パンポリポンポンヘルシーパンポリポンポン食べる前にパンポリポンポン
食前食感に大正漢方胃腸薬。
パンポリポンポン食べる前に飲む。
前回の電話より1秒会いたい。
タートルワークス、世界中で大ヒットカラーマジック。ワックス&カラーのダブル効果で愛車復活。世界の車に対応、全12色のカラーマジック。売っているのは
オートバックス。
風の強い日、港町のラグビー場でアコーディオンの古い曲を聴いた。アメリカに移民してしまった恋人のことを歌った曲だとイーモン・マクギウニーは教えてくれた。演奏の後で彼は言った。観光地にあるようなパブで演奏されているアイリッシュミュージックは本当のトラディショナルではない。あれは観光客に聴かせるような分かりやすくアレンジした音楽だ。 そして彼は意外な言葉を続けた。パブで音楽が演奏されるようになったのはつい最近の出来事だというのだ。それでもトラディショナルミュージックは必ず生き続けるとも彼は言った。レコードで満足するほど人間の耳は粗末にできてはいない。電気を通さない従来の自然な楽器で演奏を続けている限り、その音にかなうものは絶対にありえない。本当の音楽とはその楽曲だけを伝えるのではなく、楽器とはどのような音を出せるものなのかまでを文化として伝えていくのだ。なぜ人に音楽は必要なのか。庶民の生活の中から生まれた音はなぜ力強く感情にあふれ、決して廃れることがないのか。アイルランドそのものの歴史を振り返りながらある男が説明をしてくれた。音楽とは趣味ではなく、その原点から今現在に至るまで生活の在り方そのものとして生き続けていた。
The Irish music itself, the traditional music, folk music, I suppose to go back originally, before there was any instruments being played, it was the human voice, the singing. And the very oldest distinctive part of our Irish music is the Shannon singing, the old style of singing, the unaccompanied singing. And it is out of that actually that from that, so that from the very beginning, Ireland was Gaelic speaking. And all the Gaelic speaking areas had their own distinctive singers, and possibly the earliest instrument would be the Irish harp. Now we don't know that much about the playing of the harp, but it belonged to mainly the wealthier, the larger houses, and the first popular instrument which was played by the ordinary people was the uilleann pipes, and the uilleann pipes were invented about the 17th century. And they're distinctive because they're played by using the elbow as distinct from the mouth, the pipes. And after that then you had the dancing, the distinctive Irish dance. Then you had in the 19th century you had the development of the concertina, the accordion, and you had the fiddle of course, and as well as that the whistle and flute. Now all of these instruments would be played in some areas would be better known than others. For instance, say in County Clare, it was very well known as the concertina area. Say in Sligo and Leitrim, it was a great place for the whistle and flute. All along the west coast, you had fiddle players. You have some and each area had their own distinctive sound. Well, I tell you, they would, you know, embody the whole compass of human life. Really, you know, they're not many of the singing, say, particularly in the western areas, the Gaelic-speaking areas, a lot of these would be what they call Oran Water, the big songs. A lot of them are love songs. There's a lot of songs about the sea, because people fishing, therefore they were influenced by the sea. You have a lot of very fine songs there about, you know, the hills, the mountains, immigration. Like immigration, sadly, was part of our culture and it still is for generations. And many people abroad felt the need to express themselves by, in many cases they wrote songs of their exile. In more cases they felt they send these songs in poetry home. So the songs, the singing, and particularly solo singing was very, very important. And even the most finest of musicians had great respect for the Shannon singing, because in it is the most detailed richness of our heritage, really. That's I think the most unique part of our heritage. We have a history all down through the years of where our native language, say, which was spoken by maybe 100 years ago, which is not going back too far, by maybe 60 or 70% of the Irish nation would be able to speak Irish as native speakers, as distinct from people who learn the language. Whereas today, you could safely say the amount of people who would be native speakers in Ireland would be maybe 5%, and even less, to be quite honest. And all the Gaelic-speaking areas have diminished. So unquestionably, the answer would be it did influence England being dominant, and did influence our culture. And it impoverished to that extent, but in areas, particularly in remote areas, which weren't along the mainstream, where the culture itself wasn't attacked, it did remain intact to a certain extent. And that is the areas to the present day where Irish culture and Irish tradition in particular is the strongest. And that, you could say, again, is along the western seaboard practically of Ireland. Current musicians who live, the older people in the appellation, that many of their tunes are derived from Irish tunes. And many of their songs even have an Irish flavour to them. And it's quite understandable really, because the immigration from Ireland in particular to the States was prolific. If you go back to the last century, from the middle of the last century after the famine being in Ireland, there was mass immigration to the States for maybe 30 or 40 years. And there are areas in the States where Irish music was very, very strong. Now, there was also the native music, but logically both of them interchange, and there are many tunes and there are many songs, particularly in the Appalachian music, which would be very strongly influenced by Irish music. The tradition was that, we're talking now about an era where there was no radios, no televisions, and people entertained themselves, or created their own entertainment. And the entertainment they created was in their own households. And in each little locality or village, you had certain houses where people used to visit at night. Well, they passed the time away by telling stories, singing some songs, dancing, possibly in some cases might even play cards, but primarily in the homes. And the tradition of Irish music, up to now, it has passed down from fathers generation to generation in the homes.
家庭で音楽が楽しまれていた時代の記憶を残す一人の老人に会った。他に立つ彼の家には大西洋からの風が強く吹きつけ、荒涼とした海岸の先にはアラン島が薄い影のように浮かび上がっていた。昼間から酒を飲んでいるからか、彼は潤んだ目をしながら子供の頃の記憶を必死になって掘り起こした。家での会話はゲール語だったこと、ティンホイッスルの吹き方を自分で学んだこと、どこの村に行ってもまだカントリーハウスがあったこと、そして隣の家の人がアメリカに渡って行ってしまった時のこと。ゲール語の歌を歌ってくれたその夜、僕らは彼と再会した。暗い村の夜道をヘッドライトだけを頼りに走っている途中、そのヘッドライトに一瞬老人の姿が浮かび上がった。ほろ酔いで足元が怪しくなっている彼の姿だった。彼はヒッチハイクをしてパブにウイスキーを飲みに行くところだった。
That'd be about life and what was going on in life in the country, like explaining about maybe the sea, or there's such songs like what are we going to do now without timber? Where all the woods are cut down, and other things. It alludes to a lot of things. Well, immigration songs, you understand, they'd have a lot to do with the music too, you see. Songs like people going out to America from Ireland, immigration songs and immigration tunes. Reads like Farewell to Ireland, or people who live next door to me, they went to the States. And I know my mother, God rest her soul, told me that a man went for £2 to his special immigration that time. You could go to the States for £2. But then they have what they call country dances. So maybe the musicians just go there to listen to the older players playing the music. But that's how the music was, that the younger people learned it by listening to those dances. That, well, there weren't very much people writing down the notes at all that time of the music, you see. But learning it by ear, by their ear. I wouldn't be able to tell you exactly about what it means a lot to me. So I get great feeling from the Irish language, you know, by singing a verse and playing a tune. Say, for this song, supposing, you know, oh, the curtain was shanding the stachan carnel, deal ban your roar, agus ran orna, ma curtain shake on Banan and Sranja, agus stuffan and kudjelle kalin jasoya. Oro shandani shandani docha, oro handani nilati yoma, oro shandani docha, liar than Jaban is colored the wochen.
かつてアイルランドは木々に恵まれた森の島だった。至る所に美しい水が湧き、その水と森はキリスト教が伝わる以前のアイルランドの自然宗教の現場だった。しかしイギリスの支配によってその美しい自然は切り尽くされていった。石炭を掘り尽くし、森を切り尽くし、その後には痩せた土地だけが残った。しかしその中で音楽だけは支配から免れてきた。アイルランドの西の外れ、昔からの文化が色濃く残るクレア県の村の奥地にジミー・グリーソンズという古いパブがあった。普通の農家にしか見えない一軒の店の中にアイリッシュミュージックの本来の姿が奇跡のようにそのまま残っていた。ジミー・グリーソンズには看板もネオンもない。150年近くも前からこの村を通る一本道の曲がり角に立っているため、その必要がないのだという。ジミー・グリーソンズでは家庭で音楽が楽しまれていた当時のアイリッシュミュージックの現場が時計が止まったかのようにそのまま受け継がれている。客の大半は常連で、近所に住む農夫たちで占められている。店の主人も農夫であり、朝と夕方には長靴を履いて自分の畑で仕事をしている。昼間から火をつけている暖炉のせいで、店の中には薪とピートの焦げた香りがほんのりと漂っている。その香りにアイルランドでしか飲むことのできない生のギネスはよく似合う。細かい泡の立ったギネスを少しずつ口に運びながら、夜の会話は次第に熱気を帯びていく。
Well, this is a very old license. The original license here goes back to about 1850. My great-grandfather, and he was a Matthew Gleason. My grandfather was a Cornelius Gleason, and my father Matthew took over. I am the fourth generation of Gleasons here in this particular spot. You are now standing in the heart of the traditional music area of Clare, and Clare is a renowned county for traditional music. The reason we have a bit of everything is out the country you would not make a living from one particular thing alone, like a pub. So we have a bit of grocery and a farm, and between the three we manage to exist barely. This pub here, they like to dance, they like to do a dance set, and they sing songs, and some of the fellas recite. One particular fellow is very good at reciting some of Robert Selvis's poetry, and he does a very good job on it. Mostly we get a middle-aged crowd. They're mostly farmers or farmers' sons. We occasionally get business people that come out from town for a quiet drink. They like the atmosphere, and the people are very friendly. Clare is a particularly noted county for its hospitality. And time seems to have passed us by. What you are looking at out there now is the same as it was 1,000 years ago. No change. We are doing our level best to keep it like that. And we are succeeding. We are not in any hurry to become commercialized. It's one of the nicest counties still left as it was hundreds of years ago. Well, originally, in all the country houses, the farmhouses especially, the one feature of a farmhouse was a big kitchen where they did the cooking. And you had no such thing back in those times as dining rooms or sitting rooms. You had the kitchen and bedrooms. And the kitchen was big for a particular reason. They held dances, and they were known as the Shillany dances. A fellow would stand at the door, and he'd have a bowl or some kind of a basin, and you would throw in a shilling as you walked in the door. That entitled you to a night of dancing and sing-song, and in all probability you would get a cup of tea and a slice of bread. Nothing very elaborate, but it was a way of life. And then in the 50s, the Dance Hall Act, a law was passed, and it was illegal to hold country dances anymore, and it practically killed traditional music and dancing in Ireland for about 20 years. But in the 60s again there was a remarkable comeback by the traditional musicians, and they're still prospering, they're still going well today.
Well, I had music in the cradle from my mother and her aunts and her sisters and brothers. They were all musicians, and she taught me to play the concertina and the whistle. So I didn't get onto the fiddle till I was about 17 or 18 years. Well, I liked all the instruments, but I thought it was easier to play on a fiddle. You had to have a good wind to play a whistle, and like a concertina was a wind instrument too, but the fiddle was different. You could be more relaxed. Well, in the houses around the country houses, all the neighbours would be there, the young and the old. And when people come from America or Australia, they'd give a big night, welcoming home the people, and all the neighbours would turn in there. And of course there'd be plenty of drink and plenty of eats, and there'd be a big night there till morning. And boys and girls who love one another often met afterwards and got married from the country house dance. Well, later on we had football teams, and they wanted to make a bit of money to bring them to the different matches, and they charged a shilling at the door for the men and sixpence for the ladies. So that money got to pay a lorry or a bus to take them to the destination where they'd be playing. And that wouldn't be a free night, there'd be money attached to it. But there were lots of that kind of nights all over the country house dances. Well, when Christmas had come, the young people would go hunt on the run to the custom. They should kill the wren and carry him in a bush, and they'd bring their fiddles and flutes and bagpipes and bodhrans around to the houses, and they'd get money from the people of the house, and they'd arrange a night in. It was called a soiree. They'd put all the money together, and they'd buy a few barrels of Guinness and minerals and tea and sugar and the whole lot, and there'd be a great night.
村のパブでセットダンスが始まった。広い場所で4組の男女がペアを組み、昔から伝わるステップを踏みながら対面するペアと踊りを交換していく。酒と音楽だけになってしまった現在の普通のパブではあまり目にすることのできない光景だ。街にあるパブではどれだけ歴史の古いところであっても、このようにダンスをするスペースはほとんど用意されていない。同行したダブリンの住人もこの光景を見て目を丸くしていた。30歳を過ぎる彼もこのようなダンスを見るのは初めての経験だった。アイルランドからの移民がアメリカの山間部に小屋を建て、そして納屋で行われたバーンダンスの源流の姿がこの村には今でも残っていた。アメリカのカントリーミュージックもそもそもはこういう現場から始まった。イーリアンパイプがフィドルに持ち替えられ、そこにギターとマンドリンが加わることでアイリッシュミュージックはカントリーへと変化していったのだ。
ートルワークス、世界中で大ヒットカラーマジック。ワックス&カラーのダブル効果で愛車復活。世界の車に対応、全12色のカラーマジック。売っているのは
オートバックス。我がをください。
ヒーロー続々上陸中。お申し込みはお近くの電気店などへ。
アリナミン EX は問います。一つ眼性疲労、一つ肩こり、一つ腰痛、こうした症状を緩和します。武田のアリナミン EX 新登場。
富士様、富士太郎様。
あれ
J リーグ通帳できました。
今日から僕は富士太郎。
100メガショックネオジオ。
狼は眠らない。画廊伝説スペシャル SNK。
初めてアイリッシュミュージックを聴いた時、少しだけ退屈に感じたことがあった。耳が慣れてきてしまうと、どの曲も皆同じように聞こえるのだ。覚えやすいメロディーが耳について離れず、そのメロディーの記憶が音楽を新鮮に思う気持ちを邪魔した。しかしさらに聞き込んでいってみると、どの曲にも違う個性があることが分かってきた。戸惑っていた気持ちがきれいに解消されて、本来の音がそのまま全て耳に入ってくるようになった。アイリッシュミュージックの複雑さと奥の深さがようやく感じ取れるようになったのは、それから以後のことだった。改めて感じるようになったことは、曲に込められている感情の豊かさと細やかさだ。単純な曲は一つもなかった。3分にも満たない短い曲の中でも感情の流れは複雑に入れ替わり、意外なくらいの迫力を伴って、それぞれの楽器の音が洪水のように押し寄せてきた。どこかジャズにも似ていると感じたのは、決して勘違いではないだろう。そのようなアイリッシュミュージックの複雑さと豊かさが今、次第に失われかけている。若者たちにリバイバルの兆しがある一方で、ラジオとレコードの発達によって、従来の地方ごとの音の違いや細かいニュアンスなどが平均化されつつあるのだ。チーフタンズのオリジナルメンバーだったショーン・ポッツは、そういった傾向に危機を感じて、ダブリンでトラディショナルミュージックのクラブを主催している。パイパーズクラブと呼ばれるそのクラブでは、楽器ごとにクラスを開いて、本来の演奏法にのっとったアイリッシュミュージックの伝承にエネルギーを注いでいる。
Well, yes, many people, as you did say, and rightly so, a lot of people claim that Irish music is very similar. Generally speaking, they are people who are not familiar with the music at all. They only hear it now and again and have no interest whatsoever in the music. It is a beautiful music and it has great variety, in fact, but you would really want to listen to it for some considerable time in order to understand it. It is the music of the people of this nation, and particularly the people in the rural areas, although there are very, very many traditional players in Dublin, but in the main, in the rural areas, we had different styles. You have the styles of Donegal, Sligo, Clare, Kerry, and it is only when you become interested in the music that you realise how varied the music is. In the dance music alone, you've got the variety of rhythms. You've the 2/4, 4/4, and 6/8, 9/8, 12/8, all those great rhythms. So there is great variety. So they're totally wrong, those who in whose opinion the music is very similar or always the same, as they say.
Well, I think traditionally Irish people have been, it's a very musical nation. We have down the centuries had some great artists, and I think it's still very true of today. Not just in traditional Irish music, but in contemporary music and pop music. I mean, you know, U2 and people like Enya have become extremely popular throughout the world, and lots more as well. But people are looking to Ireland for music because I think they are probably influenced very much by Irish traditional music, having been born and reared in Ireland, and also because of this tradition of strength in musical ability, which I think is still very much there. And also in writing. You know, we always had very good poets and, you know, storytellers and story writers. And I think that's still true, and it comes through in your songs. You know? Well, I think it's actually become, it kind of comes in phases, you know. Every 10, 20 years it becomes popular again. And I think the young people now are very interested in it again. You'll find there will be, you know, live music in Dublin. For a big city, it's good. Every night of the week, you'll find a good traditional session, maybe a couple of them around the city. And I think that's a very healthy sign, because you will find it in the countryside, you will find it in the rural areas, and that's always been there. But sometimes the cities, it loses it, and it hasn't. We've managed to hold on to it here in Dublin, and I think that's very promising, you know. I think if it becomes popular, doesn't necessarily mean that it's commercialised. I think that would be a good thing. The more popular it becomes, the stronger it becomes. And if the more people who appreciate it and who try to understand it, because it takes a little while to understand it, especially the tunes, the traditional tunes. Once you get past that and begin to recognise tunes and know the difference between reels and jigs and the timings and all that, you can really begin to appreciate it. And I think the more people that become aware of traditional Irish music, the better. I mean, I think that's a good thing. I can't see it really being commercialised because it's very much natural instruments, and it just wouldn't happen, I don't think, really. 1,000 times a June, you are going away from the holy ground, and the ones that you love true. You'll sail the salt seas over, and then return for shore to see again the ones you love and the holy ground once more. You're on the salt sea sailing, and I am safe behind. Fond letters I will write to you, the secrets of my mind and the secrets of my mind, my love. You're the one that I adore, and still I live in hopes that you'll see holy ground once more.
Folk music in general brings countries together, and it's one of the strongest ways of bringing countries and nations and people together. The spiritual hierarchy behind humanity wishes the countries now to come together, and instead of one country saying, I'm better than another country, they want us to appreciate that each country has a great contribution to make, and music will help to smooth out that kind of thing.
A lot of young people are wanting to get back to roots, want to find out exactly what is the source of some of the great music that's happening. And if you think about it, I mean, folk music is the beginning of all music. And a lot of the great masters, they used folk music in their compositions. So the folk music is very important, and I think the young people want to get back to listen to, but they're also enjoying playing it because it's full of melody, it's full of excitement. The problem, or not the problem, but the thing we have to do is to get across the message of what it's all about, you know. get people to sit down, listen. There's no smoke screens, there's no flashing lights. It's just the tune, just the music, coming from the soul, from the
when no one died, and with a sigh, well, a pretty fair maid she appeared o'er. Her head was bare, now I do declare, she'd neither hat nor feather on, and she stooped so low, gave me to know it was mushroom she was gathering o'er. Oh, gathering o'er. She stooped so low, gave me to know it was mushroom she was gathering o'er. Where are you going, said I, my dear, what has you out so early, oh? I've seen you on the dewy grass before the sower fared oh. Royal modestly then she answered me, she gave her head one fetch up, said she, I'm gathering mushrooms for to make me mammy ketchup, oh. Oh, ketchup, oh. Said she, I'm gathering mushrooms for to make me mammy ketchup, oh. Well, the mushrooms from her apron fell, and on the dew they scattered, oh. Her hand with mine I did entwine, as the little bird bravely boasted, oh. Her parting breast and on mine she pressed, her heart was like a feather, oh. Her lips and mine did gently join, so we both sat down together, oh, together, oh. Her lips and mine did gently join, so we both sat down together, oh.
Thank you.
パブの夜は更けて時計は12時を大きく回っていた。その夜に別れを告げるように一人の農夫がシャンノスを歌い始めた。誰もが口を閉ざし、彼の歌を気持ちの中に染み込ませるように目を閉じて下をうつむいた。窓の外を見ると降り注ぐような銀河の粒が黒い夜空を大きく流れていた。街灯が一つもない田舎の村の闇の奥へその声は静かに響いていった。
朝やんやん。
ディアミックス型ファッソンマガジン朝やん発売中。
朝やん文化社。
うまいものを見ると菊正が欲しくなり、辛口の菊正を飲むとうまいものが食べたくなる。
ソニックが超音速で弾け飛ぶピンボールゲームに挑戦だ。アメリカ生まれのファンキーアクション、ソニックスピンボール。メガドライブからゲームギアもソニック。セガ
タートルワークス、世界中で大ヒットカラーマジック。ワックス&カラーのダブル効果で愛車復活。世界の車に対応、全12色のカラーマジック。売っているのは
オートバックス。
スタジアムトライアル FIM カップ93。世界のトップライダーが究極の技を競い合う前売り券好評発売中。詳しいお問い合わせはご覧のところまで。
12月1日は93年を駆け抜けた音楽、ドラマ、そして流行を検証します。
MJ 水曜夜10時10分。
つまみあるためじゃ神妙に勝利。
鯛の青虫とうまい水割り。
立場上飲むに飲めない鬼系であった。
うまい魚と淡麗辛口サントリー白角。
亀甲グラスを差し上げます。
タートルワークス、世界中で大ヒットカラーマジック。ワックス&カラーのダブル効果で愛車復活。世界の車に対応、全12色のカラーマジック。売っているのは
オートバックス。
僕の大好きなククレカレー、心が痛くて食べられないかもしれない。どうしようどうしよう、なんで食べちゃうハウスのククレカレー。
朝やん朝やんやん。
メディアミックス型ファッソンマガジン朝やん発売中。
朝やん文化社。
企業の中には私たちのイメージをはるかに超えた分野まで事業活動を広げている場合があります。ここ三菱電機もそうした企業の一つと言えるでしょう。さて今日はどんなお話をお聞きすることができるでしょうか。三菱電機はこのところソシオテックという企業理念を掲げていらっしゃるわけなんですが、まずその内容についてご説明いただけますでしょうか。
ソシオテックという言葉、これは私どもの会社のスローガンなんですけど、これの意味するところは、テクノロジー・フォア・ソサエティ、ソシオテックですね。究極的な目標はですね、やはり社会の進歩に貢献すると、皆さんがより良い生活ができるように、私どもメーカーとしてもですね、革新的な技術を早く考え出して貢献できるように一生懸命働くと、こういう意味なんですね。
そうした企業理念の中で、いろいろな事業をなさっているわけなんですが、その中で最新のトピックをいくつかお聞かせください。
このオゾン層の破壊というこういう環境問題が最近非常に大きな問題になってまいりました。それと大変深い関係があるのがこの冷蔵庫なんですね。その冷蔵庫にはですね、その温度を下げるためにですね、フロンというそういうガスを使っているんですが、これが大気中のオゾン層をですね破壊する、そういう危険性があるわけですね。したがって当社といたしましてもね、業界のトップを切りまして、そういったオゾン層を破壊する危険性が全くない、そういう材料、そういうものを最近になってこれ完成いたしまして、中型の冷蔵庫にはもうすでにそれを応用したものを発売いたしました。それから今度はですね、がんというのがですね、大変深刻な問題になっておりますね。で、今度開発したのがシンクロトロンという加速器ですが、それを利用いたしましてね、X 線よりももっと重たい、そういうその粒子をですね、光の速さの約 80% 強の速さまで加速をして、その粒子をですね、体にポンと当ててやるわけですね。そうしますとね、ちょうどその体の奥深くに入って、 その体の奥深くのところだけをの細胞を殺すことができると。こういうがん専門のシンクロトロンっていうこういう治療装置ですね。これは世界でも初めてなんですよね。
とても興味のあるお話なんですが、いずれもこれからの時代に役立つものばかりですよね。
で私どももね、もうあと7年後に控えた21世紀を目指して今会社として三菱電機としてビジョン21こういうね、施策といいますかね、ビジョンをねみんなで今議論してるんですよ。21世紀がどういう世の中になっていくか、そういう実現に向けてね、メーカーである三菱電機がどういうふうな製品だとか、どういうふうな商品、どういうシステムを提供すれば皆さんに喜んでいただけるかということをまず考えて、でそれに必要な技術、それからその基礎技術によって商品とか製品を作り上げる、こういうのがね21世紀に対する我々の姿勢で、やはり21世紀をね切り開いていくための積極的な努力といいますかね、そういうものをもっと充実することによって世の中も三菱電機に対してね大変な期待を抱いていただけると、これがビジョン21なんです。
誠実とチャレンジをモットーとされる北岡社長のもとに、これからどんな未来図が描かれていくのか楽しみです。
タートルワークス、世界中で大ヒットカラーマジック。ワックス&カラーのダブル効果で愛車復活。世界の車に対応、全12色のカラーマジック。売っているのは
オートバックス。さようなら